Hello, everyone. This is Rise with Rose, interview edition. I have the amazing Heather Ruth, and she is a phenomenal coach, guide, mentor, and numerologist. And yeah, you're amazing, and I love you. And I'm so glad you popped into my life when you did.
Oh, I
Yeah.
am so glad you popped into my life. I had such a great day the day we hung out down in Salmon Arms. So that was just
Yes.
lovely. I was like, oh yeah, this is it. These are the people, right? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. And so right before we turned on, we were talking about what year it was for you. And so maybe you can explain that to the viewers and just
Yeah,
dive into that. Yeah.
absolutely. So we have like astrology and energy, we have a number that will rule our whole year, which
Mhm.
basically is like that guiding force. It's really just, I call it the steerer in the back of the boat, right? He's just guiding you in a certain direction, really holding you in that space. So
Mhm.
collectively, we've all been in a seven. And I personally have been in an 8 energy year. And so I work my years from my birthday to my birthday. So I'm born in April. So I'm still in that 8. I'm going to be in that 8 until I have my next birthday. What I was saying is I can feel the preparation coming on. So when I have my birthday, I'm going to move into a 9 energy year. And nines are all about letting go, like
Ooh.
creating space for what's next to come. And I can just feel the excitement around that piece. It's really about landing into true alignment for
Mhm.
yourself. You're graduating into your next level. You're being initiated in those years of 9. And I am so pumped for
Mhm.
it. Um, and it's why I've been like, I felt the momentum of the 8. Everything picked up speed this year. I was really in the collective, trusting what I was doing, trusting what I'm putting out there, and then allowing my own devotion and dedication, which is like sort of those like keywords that the 8 energy will hold, to guide me through this past year, in where everyone's like, it's so tough, and I'm like, really, it's moved fast.
What? This year's
um
over. Yeah.
Right? Like all of a sudden December is here and we're in this like fresh energy of the 1 this month. And
Mhm.
then in January, we're going to start with the 9, and it's really going to say, hey, like, hey, everybody, are
Mhm.
you ready to go to your next level? Are you ready to actually leave those bags on the outside and let somebody pick them up and take them away because they're not serving you anymore? That's what January is going to feel like. So I'm stoked.
I I love that. I love that. And my background, I'm not a numerologist, but I've learned my numbers through the tarot. So
Mm,
I'm like, oh, 9. Oh, I just think of all the cards in the tarot. I'm like, oh yeah, there's some hard ones, but there's some really good ones too. And it's kind of dependent on what kind of frequency and perspective you're going to bring to that, right? Nines could be really
absolutely.
hard if you got to let go, or it could be really good if you're like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let that go. It's
They
not
can be really tough. And I mean, letting go, surrendering into going to the next level is always tough if you're not choosing it. If it's like, that most where people are like, I just don't want to stop doing that. Then you literally, if you feel like something's supposed to leave you, I'm not saying you have to let go all at once. What you have to look at is, why is that supposed to leave you? What's the lesson that it came here to bring in for you? And allow that lesson to land, because then letting go and surrendering into it will become that much easier in the grand
yes,
scheme of things.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, like, if you've got resistance, if you're feeling resistance, if you're holding on, it's such a disservice to your soul, because your soul is like, we're trying to elevate. And that thing you're holding on is like weighing us down, is holding us back. Let us go so we can get to that next phase and stage. And I think for me, I mean, I don't know what year my last year was, or this year was. But I did let go of so many things. I was just like, that's not working. Friends are gone. This is gone. And it was just like, okay, like, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to accept it, because it's not, because this is just part of the story. We're not stopping here. This isn't it. I think
Right.
I think we're just beginning for a lot of us. We're about to step into really who we truly are and why we truly came here. And we
Yeah.
can't get there without some shifts. Without some shifts.
100%. And if anyone's out here listening and they want to figure out like, what year am I in, you literally just take your date of birth, so your month, your day, each individual digit, and the current year you're in, so 2023 or 2024, And that is how you calculate the energy for your year. You get it down to one single digit, or a 10 or 11 or an 11.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So that's how you find what year you're sort of energetically working in. And each of them, I think that's where like people get really uptight about 9 sometimes, is that it also means endings. And then people are like, I don't want something to end. And that's okay. That doesn't mean it's ending in its full entirety. It could be a story that you had linked to that particular circumstance or person that's no longer willing to be with you anymore, and you've created something new and a new frequency to come in with that. And I love looking at tarot and numerology in combination. They absolutely work together. I know I'm a life path 7 and I'm the chariot card. So
Mm.
there's a lot of that like black and white, that like masculine, feminine, like energy really working with me. And I'm always, now that I've really learned to embody the feminine side, I can see the harmonization in it. I don't like the word balance myself. I like the word harmony, and that's where I'm always trying to get to.
Well, I love that. And I think when you read my numbers, I'm a life path 11, which
You are.
puts me at the justice card, which is balance, fairness, equality. Make
Yep.
sure, yeah, make sure, there's some for all. There's no lack, right? The scales are balanced when we set ourselves up for success to balance them, right? So many people have that lack mentality and it carries over. And I believe that's one of the most detrimental things to our society is this there's not enough to go around. There's so much to go
So
around.
much. Yes. And that is it, that we only see so far. And that's the beautiful part about even really understanding limitation, is that we are the ones who create the limitation. We only see so far, and also to within our own healing of self. Right. So when we aren't willing to do our work or really look at the things that are like begging to come up. So again, if you have a looped pattern or a looped thing in any type of situation that gets like, you're like, oh, I've been here before. That's coming back up so that you can look at it and go, what's the lesson I'm here to learn? Once you learn the lesson, decide to implement the lesson into your daily life, then it will leave you. You won't have that lesson anymore. You've learned it. It keeps coming back so that you will learn what it is for you to do till you can ascend to the next level or elevate, however you want to use the language, with your own higher self and your current present body self.
I love that. I love that. And I recommend lots. I'm like, look at life as a video game. Like, if you stay in this level forever, you're never going to get to the next level. And it takes experience points. And we've got to gather them through experience, through lessons. But more often than not, people get stuck. They loop. They loop over and over and over, whether it's they leave a shitty relationship and they get into another one. And you're like, all you did was you didn't take those points and like elevate yourself. Like you didn't cultivate the self-worth that those points were meant to get you to. And so you have to go around one more time until you really figure it out. And it doesn't mean life's against you. It really just means that well, I mean, let's be honest, society isn't really teaching these techniques and things to people, so they don't realize, right? They just think life is happening to them. But more often than not, once you get that download of like, oh, I'm actually steering the boat. I just didn't know I was driving. I didn't know I even who let me steer this boat, right?
Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's super true. And I think it's like anything, if you want to see a boat or a train or an airplane, if you walked away from the handlebars, what's going to happen? Right? The bike will crash. The wheel will turn in a different direction. It'll follow the level of the road. And so when we want to see, and I always ask my clients this, before we even start really working together, is I want to understand where they're at in their like perspective or level of consciousness. And when they answer, life is happening to me, I know that we're in the victim mentality. And if they say life is happening for me, I understand they've started moving into the creator mentality. They know they got to heal something, but they also know that all of the things that happened to them weren't meant for them to live a life of struggle or deprivation or any of that. It was literally here to teach them what they actually required to move to the next level. And then that's I know it when I've had really tough years financially. I was like, how can this be happening to me? But it really taught me how to come in, how to get smarter with my money, how to like be intentional with my spending. how to follow my intuition instead of like the shiny object syndrome, right? All of those pieces became really clear. And so it wasn't woe is me. It was like, yeah, thank you, universe, for teaching me those lessons because now I understand how to pay attention.
I love that. I love that. And, I'm always thinking about astrology too when I'm thinking about this. And, Saturn is in Pisces. And I think for this next little while, it is like the money, the abundance is there. It's just we've got to create the systems and structures to create the ability to harness that finance. So when you're talking about like, how do I get the things? It's like lots of people will say, well, like, I'm poor, or I can't make ends meet. And it's like, well, have you created systems and structures for the universe to get you the things that you do deserve? Right?
Yeah.
It does take work, but it shouldn't take a daily grind for 45 years. We're not living in that era anymore. But you
Yeah.
got to show up for yourself, and you got to create the abundance. Well, the abundance is there, but you got to create like the ability to literally
The
bring it into
conduit.
physical. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to create the conduit, and you have to also be open to receiving it. And that's the other part is I really find with people when they want change and you provide things, it's like I have some clients that were like, so like I should do this, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Is that right for you?
Yes.
Right? And it's like, are you, because if you're looking for me to answer that question, I'm probably not going to be the right coach for you. I'm not going to tell you how to be, how to live, what to do. You're going to be the one guiding yourself through that mostly. So if you ask me right, and you can ask my client dead up, they'll be, oh, right. He's saying that. I'm like, because what we're looking for is the easy answer. We want the instant gratification that we know we're doing the right things. The thing is, the universe takes care of the how. We have to do all the what, whens, and wheres, and whys, and hold tight to that pieces.
Mhm. Yeah, and I really see too, like it's not these big hows, it's like these little consistent, like showing up for yourself, being diligent, really like honoring your spiritual aspects, like connecting with the universe, connecting with the body. People would say, like, well, how does yoga relate to making wealth? And I'm like, there is no disconnection. They are one and the same. Like you are the universe. And if you're not, becoming the best version of you or getting to those next frequencies, you can't really call in what it is that you want. And you do deserve that. And it also is, it's working on that self-worth. So there's a whole bunch of things. And maybe you can speak to that. Like, how would someone go about activating self-worth if they are just kind of at the beginning of their journey? What can they do?
To activate self, well, that's a really good question because it's definitely an individualized journey. But really, what you have to look back at is, where did the root of the self-worth deplete?
Mhm.
So there is a lot of like that healing aspect. I find with self-worth, most of self-worth is riveted in our inner child work. So really having being brave enough to look at it with a loving perspective, that the things that had occurred for you in your early childhood wasn't meant to hurt you and damage you per se, and maybe has created some form of ripple of trauma that your body now is sort of stuck in that state. But when you are able to look at it and love it and understand and talk to that inner child, talk to that little person, and reaffirm to them that they're currently safe, that they are now loved for and tended to, that we can start to crack those pieces, and your self-worth starts to seep in, and you start to see that you were always meant and always were valuable,
Mhm.
and that just there was a circumstance or an thing that had occurred to you that then created the ripple of that you weren't worthy. You weren't worthy of being heard, seen, felt, experienced, and we have to be willing to look at that.
Mhm.
And that's what I love about numerology, is because I can go back and say, okay, well, this is the energy you were looking at working with when you were 5, right?
Mhm.
I can look at the past sort of trajectory of the life and go, okay, this is what was going on, and tell me more about this. And then we start to uncover, and they realize that your parents did the best that they could do with the information and the knowledge that they obtained and were willing to obtain.
Mhm.
And you're most likely stronger because of what happened You have more resilience than more people, especially I have found in my work,
Mm.
those that have experienced some deep traumas are actually much more resilient than those that didn't. They learned fortitude within self. And so it is just building the belief blocks. It's like, how do you want to create your first step to your own self-worth? Well, by giving myself the time to sit and read a book and see that the world doesn't fall apart,
Mhm.
that you're still worthy, even if you're not producing. And so it's redefining things like success. What does that mean for you? Not the societal aspect and idea of success, but what does it mean for you? Really getting into the language that we're speaking with also will help to build those blocks up of self-worth. And I have rapidly seen it where with clients in less than 6 months, we have healed some inner child, we have brought them on, and they start to see the magic that is coming simply by working with their numerological energy.
That's like so good. That's so good. And I see that too. It's like reprogramming the past so that you can be the organic version of you in this now moment, because it is like you came out of your mom's womb and you were perfect. And then you got implemented with all of these programs that were your parents. And you're right, they did the best that they could. But more than likely, most parents that we were raised by, our generation, wasn't given the tools or resources. They didn't know the language. There wasn't the awareness. And everything is awareness. And if you don't have that, it is so hard to cultivate anything other than the experience you're experiencing in that moment. It's hard to differentiate that you are this multidimensional being if all you are is this movie going on right in front of you.
That's
Right?
100% it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to broaden our perspective view. And so it usually starts with how far do you look? And are we dwelling on the past as something that happened to us, or are we willing to look at it as an exploration? And that's where I come in. I hold your hand. It's not scary. When things come up, we sit, we breathe, we connect with our body, we feel into it. And that is how you heal things.
Mhm.
You literally have to feel the feelings you felt when you were 5.
Yes.
Recognize that they're meant to be there for you and they're
Yeah.
not working against you.
Yeah. And, I also feel too, like people like you and I, we were meant for this. Like it is like the most rewarding thing for me. What I love um, when a client gets a concept or they say something like, I never thought about it that way. And you're just like, oh, it's almost like the heavens are like shining down a light. And you're like, oh my God, yes. And you know that that person will never be the same. Like they've unlocked the next level achievement and they're like gonna do something different. Their story is going to shift. It's
Yeah.
so profound.
Well, it's fun because even when I came and we dropped in and I did that reading for you and you were like, oh, 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 like you were literally making all these faces and I laughed and I went, I guarantee you lots of change occurs for her. I got in my car and I went, this will just help her really solidify into the things that she knows she has to do in this world. And sure enough, you messaged me and you're like, I'm closing this. I'm moving over here. And I was like, yep. And you were like, it's 100% was going to occur simply by watching these realizations land for you. And you're like, I'm working really hard at trying to make this a go. And something's like off. Once you know that, then you can let those things go really easily. And like, it's not that you're not building anything of similarity, but now with a clearer viewpoint of what it is you want to create for your people.
Yeah. And, for me, having or being tied down to a physical location with a lot of overhead was really detrimental to me trying to get this to go in the direction that I foresaw it. And now being able to take it to the internet, it's like there's this freedom in it. And, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can do this, this, and this. And there's so many examples in front of me that I'm like, oh, they're doing it. Then I like, why can't I have my own show? Why can't I do this stuff? And it was just this freedom that I couldn't find in those four walls because it was so like, you got to continually go to the four walls. You got to make sure those four walls are clean inside. You got to do all of these things. Whereas now I'm like, there is this freedom and I'm not bound to old paradigms. I don't believe we need to work 40 hours a week. I don't believe we need to hustle hustle to work. And I think we talked about this where I'm like, I got all this Mars energy in me and I'm a workhorse and that's what I do. And my mom, what or she still is she works a lot, and that has been emanated to me. So I'm like, we work. That's what we do. Us women, we work, and we work hard for
That's
our
achievement.
yes.
That's how I felt achievement. I work hard. I felt validated at the end of the day. I had the achievement, the success. And
Mhm.
that's where I say it's really important for us to redefine what success means for us individually, because what we've been seeing as kids, what we saw our parents do, what we saw our grandparents do, was all very different. I come from a family of farmers. And then, like, originally, like, as far back as I can remember, or miners. So, really hardworking people, like really working from dusk till dawn. And so I grew up seeing a lot of that. And then my parents in my immediate future were very educated. So I have a doctor, and a nurse on one side, and I got an engineer and an accountant on the other side of my family. And they work hard and they work all the time. And I watched my dad, when he relocated down Vancouver, like work crazy, like 12-hour days. And so in my head, I was like, oh, I guess that's what I have to do. And then I got sick.
Mhm.
Like, I got mentally drained, and I was working for a big bank at the time, before, like, while I was having before my children. And I started to, like, remember, like, there was days where I would just call in and, like, I'm sick, and I wasn't sick. But I just, like, knew I couldn't go to work. I wouldn't be productive. And I told myself I wasn't feeling well, and then my body said, "Okay, sure, you're not feeling well, so I'll give you some symptoms." And then halfway through the day, I would feel fine, because I would, like, lay down and I would rest and I would give myself time. And so when I had my children, I started to recognize that was not gonna work for me. Right? That kind of lifestyle was not the way I wanted to be. It wasn't the way I wanted to be a mother. I would go to work at 7:30 in the morning, drop my kid off at daycare, and I wouldn't get to see him or put him to bed. And that's when reality hit the floor. And I was like, no, that's not what I want in this world.
Yeah. And it's it's not anyone's fault. It is the programming and societal structures that really have made this the normal, because it
Mhm.
is, it's so normal. And I remember working waitressing, working nights, and just like swapping over, like swapping kids over, but then being so tired in the morning, like I couldn't function as a human being. So it was just, and I did that
Yeah.
for years and years and years. And it's not conducive for a powerful relationship or good connections with your children. And then that's when we see children's self-worth go down, because mom literally has no energy, nothing to pour into the child. And that's why we're trying to figure out, how do we do it better moving forward. And I do believe there are options. Work 40 hours a month instead of 40 hours a week. I believe that is possible. You just have to work smarter and build those containers.
Create the foundation that really you can build upon. So I know I have a strong number 4 in my chart, and 4s are about building foundation, stability, security, systems, those kinds of things. And I resisted that for quite a few years until my friend looked at me and she's like, how's it feel resisting that? And I was like, not good. And she's like, right, so maybe implement a few different systems back into your world. And so getting a planner, and I sit down once or twice a week and I go through it and I look at my time blocking, and I don't necessarily stick to it to glue. However, it's there as the best guide for me to say, okay, now I know these things have to get done, or I can move things around. It just gives me a visual of, like, the pathway that I'm headed in. If I want to create a retreat, well, here's 1, 2, 3 things that I want to do this week to move that retreat forward.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things.
Yes, yes. And I love that. And I'm getting into retreats as well. I love the infusion of being able to bring people in and then having them not leave the same person. Like, it's profound. It's
It
profound,
is.
right? I remember, like thinking about retreats that you've probably gone to personally, and then you leave and you're like, oh wow, like I'm not going to be the same. I'm going to be different. It's this like jump start to a whole new phase of your life.
Yeah. Conferences, retreats, anything where you're putting yourself in an opportunity to learn something new. And when you learn something new, you're never the same on the other side. It produces something within ourselves. That's why children change so frequently. That's why I really get frustrated with people who are like, oh, well, your kid's going to be this. And I'm like, sure, today, maybe, I don't know. But to like label them so early in life, I don't actually think is serving them, because they're learning constantly through play, through their friendship connections. If they're in school, if they're not in school, they're learning different things and they're evolving constantly.
Mhm.
And that's where I really have a hard time with the labeling system. Like, don't, I always tell my kids, don't label yourself, just be you, just be Brooklyn, just be Mason. And there's no need to define it yet right now, because you are like literally a sponge and a mold.
Well, and I like that you brought that up, because we do live in a society where everything is labels. You just like, you find a category, then you find a subcategory, and then you just like do. And not to get into anything too controversial, but I do like that freedom of, you have the ability to create whoever you are in this moment. And if you adhere to all of these labels, it's really restrictions and constrictions and rules and regulations. And it's like, allow yourself to be, because me with you here is different than me and another friend when we're talking about astrology, or a friend when I'm talking about this. I am different in different categories, or when I'm with different energies. So allowing yourself that freedom, and to not get too hyped up and trying, because that's the other thing too, is humans are like, well, where do I belong? Right? They're that sense of belonging. So they're like, if I get into a category, I'll be around other people in the category and we can have this community and I can try and feel whole. But it's kind of a false energy, because everyone in that category is looking for the same thing, just being like, I guess I'll fit here, I guess I'll
Yeah.
fit here. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I just heard, it's funny you brought that up. I just read a really great book called Belonging and Remembering Our Way Home by Toko Tapa Turner. And it's a fantastic book for anyone that really wants to read it from a spiritual standpoint. She talks about her journey coming into belonging. And then Brene Brown, like she just had a thing that was on, like there was a reel or something. Somebody put an interview up of that she did. And that is the biggest detriment, is that we sit here searching for somewhere to belong without realizing we belong everywhere and every moment of every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when you can come with that frequency into a room, like, I belong here. I may not dress like you, but I belong here. I belong at this table. I belong having these conversations. And I might wear leggings and a sweatshirt because that is me, who I am. It doesn't delineate your power, your prestige within yourself, your strength, any of that. We belong in all the spaces all the time. And we have to help our younger generations get that and understand that, because they're the generation, in my firm belief, in my firm opinion, that are going to create the biggest change and ripples in the world. I'm of the generation that's going to heal and transform and switch perspective, but they're going to actually start creating. We don't want them healing. We want them creating.
That just gave me goosebumps, because I strongly feel that too. Like, our calling, what we are here as people like you and I, we're undoing. Like, we are healing and we are teaching and we are like showing the way, but we're like lighting the way for that next generation to come through, to be like, okay, what is it that you want and require? What is it that you really want to fight for in this life? What do you want Earth to look like? What do you want your community to look like? We've now healed the adults, so they're going to get out of your way. They're not going to, try to suffocate you or suppress you anymore. You're going to have us be able to move out of the way and to support you as you build this, right? It's pretty profound.
Yeah, I think if you look at anything, like just looking at cycles of life, and you can look back, and our ancestors were doing those pieces so that we could inherit. And then we kind of then we got into that power struggle, and then we allowed the earth, like the industrialization and the technology to really take forth. And it became such a moment of power struggle in our collective society. And as Gabor Mate says, that's the toxic culture that was created. And we are trying, and I can feel this with most of my community, getting back to what does it really mean to live in my vision. Not everybody wants to live in a tropical place on a beach with the ocean all the time. And that's okay. Right? I like to visit it. I don't know if I could live there because I actually like the seasons. My happy place is in a mountain when it's snowing in the trees, right? Like I stopped the other day, it was snowing here and the snowflakes were so big. I literally stopped for like well over 45 minutes and I just watched them fall.
Mm.
And it was productive for me because then inspiration started to land and boom, I was able to write 3 emails, right? Allowing our energy to really be our guide, allowing our body and not the ego to guide us. So that heart-centered aspect is, I think, is really key in this new world.
Yeah, I do. I feel like we are moving in from that solar plexus into the heart. There is a need for a little bit of ego, but it's coming from a place that isn't like, it isn't wounded. It's not
Yeah.
wounded. It's not like I need to be better than you. It's like, let's all be better together and rise up together. But like, let's know that we're fucking amazing. Like, let's do it together.
Oh
So
no, we need our ego.
yes,
We
yes.
don't want it to go away. I mean, it's definitely the part that keeps us safe and alert and in the know. But we don't want it to run the show from a place of competition or competitiveness. This is why when you reached out and you're like, I see this all this I'm like, I love it. More collaboration, please, because we can all benefit. All our clients can benefit from all the people that we know that do great work in the world. And it doesn't mean or take away from your own value.
Yes.
That's really
Yes.
big.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I see like 2024 as, especially for the healers and the people in this work that are committed to this higher path of being of service, that coming together really, it is so key. We cannot do it separately anymore. And it doesn't mean you don't have your separate practices, but like having an overarching community or overarching support. I often say it's like the church without the church. We require that kind of container amongst the healers, or a container for anyone, even in your own friendship groups. It's like, how do we get back to being there for one another and not in a wounded place of like, oh, I'm going to get something out of this connection? It's like, no, how can I show up for this person? And then in turn, when I need someone to show up for me, they're going to do it too. There's so
Yeah.
much coming. And I think 2024 is really going to highlight this for us.
I would agree with you. And I think that's that energy of the 8 is going to highlight a lot of that piece of the devote, like the dedication. Next year's you think this year felt fast?
Is next year an 8 year for the collective? Okay.
Yeah, for the collective, it's an 8 year. And if you thought like this 2023 moved fast, I know a lot of people actually said, see you later, I could be done with 2023. That's that 7 energy of like, oh God, I had to actually walk in the muck. I had to look at it. I had to look at all the things. And the 8 is sort of saying, okay, I'm inviting you into this momentous momentum of what you want to create. And it's coming from a place of dedication and devotion. And it's coming from infinite possibility. Can you see what's possible? And it is, and like, if you think of the number 8, it is the infinity sign, and it does not have a break in it. It consistently moves and is in motion all the time. So next year is going to have that like feeling, because it's preparing us for the 9 in 2025. It's
Oh.
preparing us for letting go, for surrendering into something new, for graduating the collective into a new paradigms. Because in 2026, if you add those numbers up, you get 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the container is open for new possibility, new ideas. It is like really opening us up into a higher level of connection to divine and spirit, whatever you want to call that, universe. It is going to be the next sort of like, so I think the next 3 years we're gonna feel is like this building momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Tamara, who we both know, is like, yeah, it's the age of Aquarius. Well, when did that happen? It was in 1960s.
Yeah,
So
when we got
thinking of those cycles,
the first feelings of it. Yes,
and
yes.
think about what the 60s were like, right? Like think about what that time was like, and like really be in there and go, oh yeah, okay, like peace, love, and right, we're in that place of curiosity and creation. And so we are building through that. We are just starting, And that's why the 8 and the 9 are going to feel really potent. I think it's so excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And yeah, when I look at the astrology for next year, even to my own personal chart, it's like it is growth, expansion, and just anything that you could ever imagine has the possibility. That's what I feel next year. It has that potential. And so, doing the healing now, like hunkering down for the winter, like going internal, doing the things so you can unprogram where you feel like you don't deserve this amazing life. I think that's what we really need to focus on. And especially I almost feel like our sessions are going to blow up here because people are going to be like, oh my God, I'm supposed to prepare for something. I know I am. Like the soul is going to be like, we need support. We need
Yeah.
support, and we need support from people that have lived through it and have done the work. And I constantly say, like, being a healer, I have to live as the example in front of you. I'm not perfect, but I consistently show up in so many different ways, and it's not always easy. And
No.
this road isn't always glamorous. It hasn't
Hell
always
no.
been glamorous.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of tears, there's a lot of bumps, there's a lot of like laying on the floor, like like there's a lot of screaming in the bushes, like at the tree, like what?
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of that. And I think we're gonna see that on the rise, more people really stepping into like, what are my gifts and what do I want to do? And do I have to do it that way? Like they told me so, right? There's gonna be a bit more questioning. I think there's gonna be a little bit more pushing back on authority, and authoritative like structures that are trying really hard to stay in power. And we're seeing a lot of that crumble. So like, hold on. And I was
Mhm.
listening to Tamara's forecast into next year. She made me a little sad when she told me that December might not have very much snow, but because it's Aries and like there's
Oh,
and eclipses. And I was like, no snow? I'm gonna have to rethink my whole winter, right? Like,
yeah.
but I mean, that doesn't mean it won't come. It just means that it might be a little bit more limited here in like the lower elevations.
So funny. I love that though. I love the layering of astrology to almost anything. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's where like, when you hang out with like Tamara and I, we talk numbers, we talk astrology, we talk energy, we talk frequency, and the numerology is right in line for what the astrology is also guiding us through in the skies. And so on Earth, like the collective of starting a year in a 9 energy month, like just like thinking about that from a perspective of really letting things go, especially in a month that is very much ruled by the whole like deck of cards of the spades,
Mm.
which is always calling us higher, is always calling us to the next level. They're always saying, like, have you included everything, health, wealth, physicality, emotionals? Like, are you looking from your whole self to take it to the next level? And so that like January will be a bit potent of people like really stepping into their own, because they'll be ready to start rolling with new things in February.
I love that. And that's like right online because Pluto does move into Aquarius like January 20th. And I'm an Aquarius rising, so it hits my first house. And I already feel it. Like I can feel energy before it's coming. And I think that's the last few months has been this transformation of like spotlight's going to be on you, or it's going to be on the things that you were doing. Make sure they're in alignment with what you actually want to be doing. So anywhere where it's hard or it's a grind, let it go. Like let that go. There's something else. Like trust that there is more to this story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just really potent energy to learn more about yourself. This is the time to truly dive in and really become intimate with who you are and what you want and your desires, and how you want to be of service if you want to be of service. And that's okay for those that don't, because we need all combinations, right? We need the service people that are a service to humanity. We also need the people that are like building humanity or building structures for us in change and to evolve. Need
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I've got a background in working in restaurants, and I'm like, it's like a restaurant. We need the cooks, we need the servers, and we need the customers. Otherwise, there's no restaurant. There's no flow. There's no exchange.
Right.
It's just we're just cooking food and no one's showing up. It doesn't really work. So there is, and what's really cool is, you know, there's the opportunity for customers to move into different positions. And that's what's cool is I used to be a customer, but now I'm a server, right? And I also cook a little bit in the back, right? I'm like actually cooking things that people are going to digest.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally got that download as soon as you were. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's why I worked there for 15 years, so I could.
Right, it teaches you things. It's the same with the bank, right? Like when I worked at the bank, I understood like we have to have those that serve the public. We needed the customers to come in, we needed those to serve the public, we needed the managers to like make sure that like they're the cooks and things are like running smoothly behind the scenes. And then do we really need to go any further? But there's corporate constructs that, you know, didn't work and you could see that they weren't working. And I noticed that way back in like 2015, 2014, when I was like in the banking system. Well, actually I was in the banking system in 2008. So I really saw it, how
Yeah.
things are.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with the astrology and what's going to happen next year, we're really going to see the not only the resistance to authoritative power, but like the not need for it, where we're like, do we actually need someone, you know, way over there telling me how to live here in this now moment in my own house, in my own community? I believe the power is going to be redirected, and you're going to see like, actually, I can take my own power back and I can make my own decisions and I can navigate my life from a place of sovereignty. So next year, that'll be a thing where people are like, what does it mean to be sovereign? And then how can I implement that into my own life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like really important. And you know, as I was reading a book, I'm reading a book called If Women Rose Rooted by Sharon Blackie, and it's phenomenal. And one of the old mythological stories was during King Arthur's time, they were trying to find out like what did women actually want? And the sorcerer was like, they only want one thing. And you know, did they want beauty? And he'd ask people all the time, and he would get all these different answers. And finally, he met like the ugliest person on the road, a hag. And she said, well, I'll tell you what women want. And he was like, oh, she doesn't know what women want, right? Because he judged her upon the appearance that she was. And she said, women want sovereignty.
Yeah.
And above all else, they want sovereignty. And so then he took it back to the sorcerer that put this like that sent him on this quest, and he told him that. And the sorcerer went, how did you know that? And then the hag came forward in the chamber, and I was like, oh, that's my sister, she tricked you, but you are also correct. But now what happened is he entered into a commitment with the hag. He had to promise her to find her a husband. Right, like these mythological stories are really important to also understand our own human evolution. And you know, he promised her to find a husband, so he promised his bestest warrior, and his bestest warrior said yes because he was of service to something greater than himself, which was Arthur. Right, was all these kinds of really interesting parts. What turns out, because he committed and was of service and he married her regardless of what she looked like, she actually turned out to be the most beautiful person on the land, right? Like, and they had a loving and long-lasting marriage. And it was because he chose from the most beautiful place within him. The service was more important than the beauty on the outside. And I just love that story. It's like
That's so
stuck with
good.
me.
That's so good. And I love that. And really it is. It's like we are here to learn how to become sovereign and to govern from our own inner compass. You know, we are all God at that. We are all God. And so we all have different aspects and reflections of God. And so we all want slightly different things. And that's okay. But being authentically us in that sovereignty, you know, not until we live in that are we really able to fully manifest into who we really truly are meant to be. And I think that's beautiful. I feel like we're probably going to need to end it there. We're almost like an hour in.
I know.
We're so easy to talk to, and I love it. And I'm like, listen, if I can just get paid to do things like this is my dream come true. This is my dream come true.
Yay!
Yeah. This was
Well,
amazing. And I'm so glad that you came and that we got to experience this. And I feel like I would love to have you back on.
I would love to come back on. I would absolutely love to come back on. I love talking about all of this stuff, numerology, astrology, like how we interweave these stories into our existence. And this is what I do in my women's circles that I host.
I love that. Yeah. So if you have anything you want to share, you have coming up or any offerings, if you want to just share that for the last minute here.
Yeah, so one of the big offerings that I have, well, it's coming up in 2024, is an offer to work with me like for a year. And I think the price tag's pretty beautiful. It's only $2,500, but it is a deep dive of like held support during your yearly numerological energy. And so we only actually meet once every 52 days. We're meeting in transition. So we meet either just before you transit from Mercury to Venus. So it's to explain that process. And for a little bit, like an added on bonus, a little extra price tag, the bonus will be, we'll go on our private 2-day retreat where we dive totally deep into a lot of things and we heal things in a rapid succession. That's my biggest offer coming up this year. And I love it because it's just going to be so juicy to be in like a mini retreat at the end of the time together. And so I'm looking forward to that. I also offer women's circles here in Lake Country, BC. And our first one will be on January the 16th, I believe. It's not around, I couldn't do it around the new moon schedule because new moons are happening like early this year. They're like right in the beginning of the month. And I unfortunately do a lot of volunteer work and all of those meetings land in the beginning of the month. So it'll be the January 16th. I hold them once a month. They're here in my backyard. They're a mixture of great conversation, opening us up to different perspectives, numerology, astrology, and hopefully to bring in some other guests, healers that are also trying to build their businesses. So, yeah.
I love all of that. I love all of that. And if people need to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
Best place to find me, the easiest place to find me is Instagram for sure. You can DM me on Instagram, or my website is puresoulfulcoaching.com. And on there you can book a Let's Connect appointment, and we just jam. It costs you nothing. I usually give you some tidbits around your numerology, and we just sort of see where we can go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you again. And I'm just going to say goodbye to our viewers. And remember that you can only perceive that which you are. So raise your vibes. Have a great day, guys.